majorities in midterms. House and Senate Democrats' wafer-thin majorities are in trouble leading up to the 2022 midterms. According to a report, history, retirements, and redistricting will play a key factor for the Republicans in taking back the House. The Los Angeles Times reports that Democrats are at a high risk of losing their partisan control of Congress in the midterms. As the Times reports, the history of the president's party usually loses seats in Congress midterms. The report noted the big wipeouts. Under President Obama in 2010, Democrats lost control of the House in a Tea Party-fueled wave. In 1994, under President Clinton, Republicans took control of the House and Senate for the first time in 40 years. In midterms over the last century, the president's party gained House and Senate seats only twice, but both in times of national distress. In 1934, during the Depression under Franklin D. Roosevelt, and 2002 when President Bush was enjoying post-September 11 popularity. Some Democrats hope for a 2002-like scenario if Biden succeeds in leading the country out of the pandemic. And it's not just history. Of course, history ruled in Trump's favor in the 2020 election. Being an incumbent president headed for re-election, he was expected to get a second term, of course, until all this craziness happened. So who knows how 2022 is going to move forward. But the Democrat panic continues because it's not just history. It's also the radical left. I mean, just not too long ago in the 2020 election, Democrats lost a ton of seats in the House, specifically due to far-left messaging. In all the toss-up areas and all the moderate areas where regular average American voters just don't want Democrat socialism or anything close to the style of AOC politics, they voted Republican to represent them in the House. And the fear continues among Democrats for this to snowball out of control. Democrat report indicates party panic over socialism, defund the police narrative with working class and Latino voters. A Democrat report indicates party panic over far-left initiatives that Republicans exposed as inconsistent with working class and Latino voters' values in the 2020 election cycle. The report created by three Democrat groups, Third Way, Collective PAC, and Latino Victory Fund, assert Republican messaging is carving inroads with voters, which moderate Democrats struggle to counter since some within the party identify as democratic socialists. The report states the socialism attack hurt campaigns in states and districts with immigrant populations that fled socialist governments, including among Venezuelan, Cuban, Vietnamese, and Filipino voters. The report's authors also believe Republican messaging tying socialist policies of Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Democrat from New York, were impactful in swing districts. This potpourri included efforts to tie candidates to socialism, Medicare for all, the Green New Deal, Nancy Pelosi, AOC, and the Squad, they meant to say the Hamas caucus, in these cases all framed as equally radical. These attacks were used to a greater or lesser degree depending on the unique constituents of a given district, the report explains. There was no one best way to counter these attacks, nor was a clear argument given. Was there a clear agreement, even, that we should address the issue in paid communications? And so Democrats are seriously panicking. How do they counter the defund the police and Democrat socialist element in districts where they are receding heavily? I mean, in Miami-Dade, Donald Trump did absolutely incredible among Latino voters. And of course, all the House seats that they lost, they still haven't figured out a way to not be associated with the politics of Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. Remember a couple months ago we covered that story of Democratic candidates refusing fundraiser money from AOC because they didn't want to be in any way associated with her. And even one Democrat politician, after they lost all those seats in the House, blamed it specifically on AOC and basically had a meltdown on how far-left messaging was affecting her and her Democrat compatriots. The Democrats are panicking, and now Nancy Pelosi has to deal with the Hamas caucus, saying probably the most radical things we've ever seen when it comes to foreign policy on the floor of the House. Only 12 of 219 House Democrats condemn Ilhan Omar for comparing US and Israel to terrorists. Democrats in the US House of Representatives released a statement Wednesday night condemning Representative Ilhan Omar for comparing the United States and Israel to Islamic terrorist groups such as Hamas and Al-Qaeda. Only 12 of 219 Democrats in the House signed the condemnation. And so there's something interesting. If you look at the list right here with all the names, you're gonna notice that Nancy Pelosi specifically did not outright condemn Ilhan Omar. In fact, she even came out and protected her.
Should any further action be taken against Representative Omar for her comments?
No.
Are you concerned
No, I
about
don't.
the divide in the cost?
No, I don't. I think that she clarified her remarks, and that was we accepted that, and she has a point that she wanted to make, and she has a right to make that point. There was some unease about how it was interpreted. She made her clarification.
No action needs to be taken against Ilhan Omar after equating Israel and the US with terrorist groups. That's Nancy Pelosi's perspective, or at least that's her answer when questioned about it by the media. Nothing to see here, folks. Everything's fine, definitely not a dysfunctional family. But the moment the door closes, Nancy Pelosi is probably fuming from her ears, smoking vapor out of the nostrils and out of her ear holes, as red as a tomato with bloodshot eyes and bulging veins in her forehead, having to deal with this stuff in the first place. And how do I know that Nancy Pelosi is saying something different on the outside as to what she's saying on the inside? Well, it's because that's what she's always doing. And she was caught uttering under her breath, trying to be slick, venting after being questioned about the whole Ilhan Omar thing.
You get one right here. Okay, ready? 3, 2, and back over here.
She said specifically, can you imagine those people though, how awful they are? The question is, who was she speaking about? Republicans? The Hamas caucus? The reporter's asking her the question. Who knows what it is, but the point is, Nancy Pelosi is always putting on a smile for the camera. Everything's a-okay over here, folks, but behind the scenes, she's a very shrewd politician focused on results, and she knows exactly how this affects her party. So what does a shrewd politician like Nancy Pelosi do in this case? Well, of course, obfuscate and distract. Not only by distracting the media saying everything's okay, folks, the Democrats are all aligned, there's nothing to see here, but of course, evil orange man bad, and let's start another investigation targeting Donald Trump in 2021, because we haven't had enough of those now, have we? Pelosi calls for investigation after New York Times reports Trump's DOJ investigated House Dems subpoenaed Apple data. Okay, a very reputable source in the New York Times, and another uncorroborated, unsubstantiated claim against Donald Trump, whether fact or fiction, I don't even know at this point. But I'm so desensitized to this stuff that I immediately think it's either overblown or completely false in the first place, and it's just too convenient in the timing. Never forget, we literally just debunked the whole Trump photo op narrative, and it's just one after another, phony stories, phony accusations, witch hunts, the whole 9 yards over and over again. 8 anti-Trump narratives the media finally had to admit were false all along. Well, kind of, and we still haven't received real apologies, but I'd hold my breath on that one. Trump ordered protesters to be tear gassed for a photo op. That one's debunked. The lab leak theory was a conspiracy. Debunked. Trump ignored Russian bounties on US soldiers. Debunked. Trump told Georgia officials to find the fraud. Debunked. Trump said white supremacists were fine people. Debunked. Trump referred to illegal immigrants as animals. Debunked. Trump flat out lied when he said his campaign was wiretapped. Debunked. Trump removed the Martin Luther King Jr. bust. Debunked. Not to mention Russiagate and him calling veterans suckers and losers at the War Memorial in France. Lies upon lies upon lies upon lies. And so this new investigation led by Nancy Pelosi into the New York Times reporting, well, do you really judge me if I think it's just another lie? I really don't think you do. That's what I got for you guys on this one though. If you enjoyed it, please make sure to leave a like, a comment, subscribe, share the video as much as possible. We're still shadow banned by the YouTube algorithm, hidden from non-subscribed viewers. Now I gotta get back to work, and like usual, I want to thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you on the next one. Hey guys, welcome to the Liberal Hive Mind, a channel solely focused on exposing the abundant hypocrisy of the left. What's the joke that we always make on this YouTube channel? I mean, it's not just us. People who are part of our political persuasion, we always say, lefties, you think you're so woke, you're anti-capitalists, viva la revolucion, but then you share the same political viewpoints as Best Buy. It is so true, it's not even funny. The whole idea of woke corporations taking advantage of dummies on Twitter, pretending to be down with their cause, just to pander to their favorite age demographic. When it comes to advertising, that's literally all it's about. They've somehow found some sort of strategy where if they pander to some sort of woke ideology to a woke crowd, it must increase sales. We're maybe not seeing the whole picture, at least when it comes to these massive corporations. We've seen certain elements of get woke, go broke, where people just take things too far, they get downvoted to oblivion, or they get a loss in sales, a loss in revenue. But in terms of the grand scheme of things, just the average genuflecting to the woke crowd that doesn't doesn't cause some sort of outrage. It must lead to a boost in sales. There's no other reason that they would do it. They're not doing it because they actually care. I mean, just look at Georgia, for instance. Like we've covered in a couple different videos, Tim Scott asked tons of CEOs of these major corporations who were attacking the voter integrity bills that were passing in the state of Georgia. Well, what's discriminatory? What's restrictive? And not a single CEO could answer the question. They just voiced the empty Democrat platitudes. Voter suppression bad, okay? Now buy my product. Well, you can never be woke enough, as people have been saying these days. And turns out, the radical left on Twitter have now turned on woke corporations that are genuflecting to their cause. It was only a matter of time. It's probably one of the most beautiful things that I have ever seen in my entire life, as the woke left and their ideological leaders have now set their crosshairs, set their aim on fake woke pandering. You gotta love it, folks. But before we get into any of it, please make sure to leave a like, a comment, subscribe, share the video as much as possible. We're still shadow banned by the YouTube algorithm, hidden from non-subscribed viewers. And with that out of the way, let's roll the tape. Alright folks, so Ron DeSantis said it best himself, and I definitely love our perspective a whole lot more. We have seen through this absolute pandering nonsense BS since the start. DeSantis said, "You can't be cowed by woke corporations, NCAA, to hell with these events. We've stood by our values and by what we believe in." And I'm sure a lot of you guys, just like I have stopped supporting these woke brands. I refuse to buy Gillette. I don't even watch the NBA anymore, and I absolutely love playing and watching basketball. We've been ahead of them on this one, where lefties, on the other hand, have gotten in bed with these major corporations thinking that they're woke allies who are willing to usher in an era of taxing themselves to death and ending capitalism to usher in some sort of communist dystopia. Major corporations making billions of dollars in a capitalist system are definitely going to do both of those things now, aren't they, AOC? Well, here we go, folks. It's just a matter of time. Corporate wokeness for Pride Month slammed by AOC and other progressives. Companies virtue signaling for Pride Month are being cut down to size by woke politicians, exposing their donations to anti-LGBTQ politicians. The same politicians with whom the corporate wokesters were trying to court favor do not appear to be buying the messaging that they're selling. Representative Pramila Jayapal has recently taken to outing companies on Twitter for changing their profile photos to rainbow logos despite donations to Senator Mitch McConnell, who opposes the Equality Act. Here's the first tweet with Walmart's new logo. "Whoa, cute pride logo. What's not cute is giving more than $150,000 to Mitch McConnell and other GOP senators who are actively blocking the Equality Act from becoming law. American Air, the exact same thing. What a fun pride display." But what's not fun is that American Airlines donated $46.6 thousand to Mitch McConnell's 2020 campaign while he was actively blocking the Equality Act from becoming law. AT&T, same thing. AT&T donated $56.3 thousand to Mitch McConnell's 2020 campaign while he was actively blocking the Equality Act. But what a great pride Twitter banner. AOC then retweets Representative Jayapal's tweet of Raytheon Technologies with the same thing. This week's guilty pleasure, watching Representative Jayapal go down the list to expose phony corporate #Pride rebrands with how much money they've given to fund anti-LGBTQ plus politicians. Remember, just because a company slapped on a rainbow doesn't mean that they support the LGBT plus community. Brandon Morse has the perfect response. "I feel like this is a teachable moment for brands that thought they'd be safe from being eaten by the beast if they fed it." And that is the absolutely perfect metaphor right there, folks. You can never be woke enough for the woke crowd. Eventually, they'll swarm on you like a bunch of swarming angry bees, especially if you set yourself up or you set them up to come for you in the first place based on your blatant, obvious hypocrisy. I mean, for Pete's sakes, Nike has been at the forefront of the racial equality movement and promoting Black Lives Matter, while literally funding child slavery and working with the Chinese government and their horrible human rights oppressions and human rights violations over the past couple of decades. How to find a whole group of liberals. Walk into the Apple store in any major city. There's two things that we can associate liberals with. That's Starbucks lattes and Apple iPhones and MacBook Pros. Not one of them has ever wondered the absolute hypocrisy of how their Apple products were made. Of course not. It's a bunch of phony companies pandering to a whole phony crowd, and so it was just inevitable that they would start eating each other alive. These phony woke hacks are exactly that, they're hacks. They're a bunch of phonies, folks. These corporations are not woke. They're not down with the cause. They're greedy, money-hungry capitalists who are taking advantage of useful idiots. And then on the other side, these woke Twitterati folk aren't the tolerant, compassionate, inclusive group that they claim to be either. Case in point, Black Republican House representative blocked from joining Congressional Black Caucus. The totally tolerant and exclusive left happen to be so bigoted and intolerant and so exclusive that they reject black Republicans from joining the Black Caucus based on the fact that he's a Republican. Absolutely despicable. And honestly, the only reason I'm really mentioning this story is because I have to show you guys this little segment right over here between Congressman Donalds and a CNN anchor. I mean, I forget her name, but that's not exactly relevant. Just check out this encounter.
I'm a poor kid from Brooklyn, New York. I'm 42 years old. I've been able to be successful in my life. So whether it's talking about jobs or yes, even voting rights or anything that the CBC wants to talk about, I have a perspective being a 42-year-old black man who's come up in America after a lot of the battles through the civil rights movement that I think is actually will be helpful and a helpful perspective to the CBC. I've actually expressed interest in joining. I think having a wider range of discussions from all sides of the political framework is important, not just for Black America, but all America.
Questioning of the election, which many Republicans have done, is the basis, really, for all of the bills that we have seen across so many states that, if passed, will effectively reduce voting access of Black Americans. Do you think that that is something that might be incongruent with the mission of the CBC?
Well, first of all, what's going on with whatever going on with the 2020 election, that has nothing to do with this at all. Number two, I would say if you actually look at the bills that have been passed in Florida, Georgia, actually Black Americans and all Americans, whether you live in those states, have more access to the ballot, not less. Those are the facts because I've read both bills.
Furthermore, you have defended President Trump you've said he's done enough when it comes to rebuffing ideas about white supremacy, but I do want to listen to some of his prominent comments on the subject of race to get your perspective.
Blame on both sides, and I have no doubt about it, and you don't have any doubt about it either. Who would you like me to condemn?
White supremacists and Proud
Boys, stand back and stand by. When people proudly had their Confederate flags, they're not talking about racism. They love their flag. It represents the South. What do you prefer? Blacks for Trump or African Americans for Trump? George Washington was a slave owner. Was George Washington a slave owner? So will George Washington now lose his status? Look at my African American over here. Look at him. Are you the greatest?
First of all, whatever the president said in the past has nothing to do with this discussion at all. I think what's important to understand
you've defended
please
him.
Don't cut me off. I have not cut you off in this interview. Please do not do that to me. Thank you. As a Black man in America, I'm allowed to have my own thoughts on who I choose to support and who I choose not to support.
Here is a CNN anchor, a white liberal woman, telling a black man that his ideas and who he supported politically are incongruous with the mission of the Congressional Black Caucus. Donald's response: as a black man in America, I'm allowed to have my own thoughts. And it's absolutely game over right there. But the absolutely despicable play of CNN to play a bunch of Donald Trump quotes completely taken out of context, as if there was any type of racial animus or prejudice in any of those quotes, just goes to show exactly how dishonest they really are. They're continuing to push the Charlottesville hoax of good people on both sides, then playing a bunch of random quotes from Donald Trump, once again out of context without any leading or following up statements, and asking him, how can you possibly associate yourself with this man? The irony being, as I keep playing this clip, this little montage, how can you associate yourself with this man?
You have a problem figuring out whether you're for me or Trump, and you ain't black.
Young black entrepreneurs are just as capable of succeeding given the chance as white entrepreneurs are. But they don't have lawyers, they don't have accountants.
A lot of people don't know how to register. Not everybody in the community, in the Hispanic and the African American community, particularly in rural areas that are distant and or inner city districts, know how to get online to determine how to get in line.
The hypocrisy sees no bounds, folks. The woke left is anything but woke. They're asleep at the wheel, and it's only a matter of time till the short bus crashes into a ditch. That's the video that I got for you. If you enjoyed it, please make sure to leave a like, a comment, subscribe, share the video as much as possible. We're still shadow banned by the YouTube algorithm, hidden from non-subscribed viewers. I gotta get back to work though. I want to thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you on the next one. Hey guys, welcome to the Liberal Hive Mind, a channel solely focused on exposing the abundant hypocrisy of the left. As Joe Biden takes victory laps, I have created 2 million jobs in the first 4 months of my presidency. It's a record of all time. This is the hashtag Biden economy. By the way, creating jobs that already existed, it's just people going back to work after the pandemic. But as he pretends he's winning, the question is Joe Biden really winning? Are his policies really not necessarily winning for Joe Biden and his political messaging, but winning for you? Winning for the American people? The answer, as of right now, is a big fat no. And I mean a real big hefty no. Biden is bringing back the stagflation never seen since the 1970s. As the growth of the economy continues to stagnate, jobs reports are not hitting the mark, and inflation is the highest we have seen in multiple decades. So yes, this is actually Joe Biden's economy, but it's the exact opposite story that the Democrats are telling. And so of course, if the Democrats are spewing a bunch of political rhetoric that happens to be nonsense, aka Democrat propaganda, well, let's cover the truth. But before we get into any of it, please make sure to leave a like, a comment, subscribe, share the video as much as possible. We're still shadow banned by the YouTube algorithm, hidden from non-subscribed viewers. And with that out of the way, let's roll the tape. Alright folks, so here's the headline story. Inflation nation, consumer prices jump 5%, fastest pace since 2008. Consumer prices surged higher in May. The consumer price index rose 5% compared with a year ago. The Department of Labor said Thursday on a monthly basis the CPI rose a hotter than expected 0.6%. Economists had predicted the Labor Department to report that consumer prices rose 0.5% in May compared with April. The consensus forecast was a 4.7% gain when measured against May 2020, which would have been the hottest reading since skyrocketing energy prices pushed up the index in the fall of 2008. The reading for core inflation, which strips out volatile food and energy prices, was expected to rise 3.5% compared with a year ago. That would have been the strongest annual increase in 28 years on a monthly basis. Economists were expecting a 0.5% gain. On Thursday's release, the government said core inflation rose 0.7%. On an annual basis, core inflation jumped 3.8%. This was the hottest reading since June 1992. And while it's not time to jump the ship just yet, it's not time to panic. It's certainly not exactly a good thing for your average consumer. I'm sure there's tons of wealthy people out there that are probably going to somehow find a way to make a buck out of this. But for your average worker or your average person who's just trying to save money and build a better future, this is not a good thing. It's not time to panic just yet because that 5% figure is being boosted by two specific things, as they mention actually in the article. The index for used cars continues to rise 7.3% in May. Compared with a year ago, used car prices are up 29.7%. And this most likely is not going to stay like that forever. The cost of travel and specifically airline tickets as well as used cars are at the top when it comes to inflation percentages. And I'd say that most likely that's a response to the pandemic and isn't going to continue at the rate that it's going. But even if it doesn't hit that 5% mark, it's still pretty damn high. It's definitely not a good thing. Inflation makes you poorer. It makes the contract that you might have signed for a specific salary for maybe a year, 2 years, maybe even longer, worth less. Yet the Biden administration is trying to argue the exact opposite. More insanity. Yellen says inflation about to surge, but it will be a plus for a society. Somehow inflation is a good thing now. It's funny because the goalposts have been moving over the last couple of months. First it was there's no inflation, then it was transitional or seasonal inflation, then it was temporary inflation. Now inflation is apparently a good thing. I find that hard to square with the fact that liberals have been complaining for how long? I mean, the entire argument behind the $15 minimum wage is that wages have stagnated and haven't kept up with inflation. Inflation has gone through the roof as wages have just moved up incrementally. They're pushing for a $15 minimum wage, but it seems as though if their policies continue to have the results that they're having, $15 an hour is going to be absolutely nothing in the grand scheme of things. This is the Biden economy for those at the bottom of the economic scale. Homes being bought up by investors, the real estate market is through the roof, gas prices are more expensive, Joe Biden's talking about a carbon tax, Donald Trump's tax cuts are set to expire, Joe Biden is trying to ram through a $16 trillion spending package, which of course cannot be paid for without raising taxes. And I don't want to hear the argument of only people over $400,000 are going to have their taxes increased. Even if that's the case, there's absolutely no way you'll be able to spend for that package that he's proposing. And so it seems as though under a Biden administration, it seems as though in the hashtag Biden economy, the poor are getting poorer. The exact opposite of what we were seeing under Donald Trump, with massive growth rates, low inflation, the lowest unemployment we'd seen, and wages were actually rising. People were doing better. People were also paying less in taxes and saving a bunch, buying homes, and upward mobility was becoming a thing across the board, not just for people with white privilege, as the Democrats might argue. I mean, just just take a look at this chart. It's absolutely staggering. US inflation, as you can see from the 1960s. We then have the Jimmy Carter era, where you see a spike. I mean, if this was your stock portfolio, you'd be booming. But this is the exact opposite of that. Inflation rose to about 13% in the late 70s and early 80s after Jimmy Carter. It then started to stagnate a little bit. It was pretty bad in 1992. And now, boom, we're seeing the same sort of sharp increase as we did during the early days of Jimmy Carter. Is that the end all be all? Is it time to panic? Is the sky falling? We don't know that just yet, but it's certainly alarming to say the least. You're not just being taxed by Democrat policies that plan to tax you higher. There's the hidden tax of inflation. There's the hidden tax of literally everything becoming more expensive, and then on top of that, a carbon tax that Democrats are now trying to promote. My perspective is kind of in the middle, where this chart specifically, it may jump out at you and cause panic, but we do know that a certain element is, of course, the reaction to the COVID pandemic. That's absolute. But I think it'd be a little bit naive to just pretend as if under Joe Biden's watch, it's just all gonna go back to normal, considering all the money that's just being spent, without any regard for the actual fiscal impact. And at the end of the day, anything's possible with this guy in office. I mean, for Pete's sakes, I think it's probably a safer bet to bet for things to go wrong with Joe Biden in office than for things to go right. I mean, he doesn't even remember that he's the friggin' president. Check this out.
When I was 14, if you please, at ease. I keep forgetting I'm president.
I'm Joe Biden and I'm running for Senate. To now today, oh, I forgot I was president. This is the guy that's dealing with the economy. This is the guy that's making all the biggest decisions when it comes to printing money. This is the guy who's representing the United States of America on the world stage. And by the way, there were some leaked text messages today which are backing up my claim that Joe Biden is absolutely lost. And by the way as well, another by the way, this isn't some Republican hit piece. This is from the Labour Party in the UK, which is essentially the Democrat Party, but even more socialist. This is from the left-wing establishment in the UK. We got this tweet from Jack Posobiec. Breaking: Labour Party member comments at least Trump was attentive, says Biden can't keep up with G7 events or follow note cards per White House official to @human events. Here's the actual text message from an iPhone. At least Trump was attentive is the general consensus among Labour Party right now. This is all so new for him. Hard to keep up with everything. Note cards have proven completely useless. You don't even want to know what Tory leadership is saying. Tories are the conservatives. But we know exactly what the Tories are saying. The Tories are saying what they've been saying on Sky News in Australia for the last couple of months.
And you mean to say this bloke Biden isn't cognitively delinquent? Have a listen to this. The President of the United States of America.
We have to do more than just build back better. We have to build back better. With regard to Russia, I know it concerns some of you, but I made very clear to Putin that we're not going to seek escalation.
Putting Biden in this position of leading the world's democracies is elder abuse. His incoherence is not new, but it surely can't go on. There will have to be a presidential resignation shortly.
Joe Biden's dropping the ball, but honestly, it's not even his fault. Democrat voters have completely dropped the ball on this one. And the old man just doesn't seem to know what he's doing. The guy's lost. He's being walked all over by China and other nations, and even by the Democrat establishment as a whole. Biden drops Trump's attempted TikTok ban after app rolls out new plan to collect users' biometric information. And so, of course, under a Biden administration, it's all gonna fly. It's all gonna go through. Just put the paper in front of Biden, say sign right over here, and he's signed. Democrats have absolutely screwed themselves on this one with their completely unrealistic understanding of how the world works. Biden's played into it, and of course, you get exactly what Republicans warned you of. High inflation, less freedom, less opportunity. Your vote at the ballot box made you poorer. Oh, and I forgot to show you guys this one. I should have mentioned it earlier, but let's just fit it in here at the end. Amidst push for $15 minimum wage, McDonald's begins testing voice automated drive-thrus. Robots are taking your job because these massive corporations would rather automate than be forced to pay a higher wage arbitrarily. And so, like usual, Democrats.
Congratulations, you played yourself.
That's what I got for you guys though. If you enjoyed the video, please make sure to leave a like, a comment, subscribe, share the video as much as possible. We're still shadow banned by the YouTube algorithm, hidden from non-subscribed viewers. I gotta get back to work. I want to thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you on the next one. Hey guys, welcome to the Liberal Hive Mind, a channel solely focused on exposing the abundant hypocrisy of the left. Folks, it's time to move to Florida. Ron DeSantis is the most based governor of all time. The man just doesn't wait. He doesn't tiptoe around subjects. He chooses a position and goes all in. The guy just doesn't mess around when it comes to decisive leadership. Truly decisive leadership. And here's another win in the state of Florida, as Ron DeSantis officially made it illegal, folks, illegal to incorporate critical race theory in public school classrooms across the entire state. Dunzo. Finished. There's a whole lot of rhino Republicans out there who pander and virtue signal, but when it comes to actually doing the right thing, when it comes down to shutting down cultural institutions of hatred that have taken root in American government and are trying to brainwash your kids, they do nothing about it, or they're too slow to move, too slow to react. Ron DeSantis is the exact opposite, and this is exactly why he's so popular. This is the difference between an establishment rhino who's always playing the political game but never actually doing anything, and a true Republican leader. This is the difference between based or an absolute disgrace. Let me show you guys exactly what I'm talking about. Let me show you why Florida is slowly becoming the greatest state of all time, at least in my personal opinion. But before we get into any of it, please make sure to leave a like, a comment, subscribe, share the video as much as possible. We're still shadow banned by the YouTube algorithm, hidden from non-subscribed viewers. And with that out of the way, let's roll the tape. Alright folks, so over the last couple of months, we've seen a specific phenomenon grow to an astounding degree, and that's parents who are absolutely fed up with the ridiculous levels of wokeness that the school curriculum in public schools has reached. We've seen tons of viral videos of parents just taking it to the school board, kind of something like this.
Thank you for having me speak. My name is Keisha King. I'm a mom of two, one who's in the Duval County Public School System and one in private school thanks to school choice. I'm also a member of Moms for Liberty, representing thousands of parents. Just coming off of May 31st, marking the 100 years of the Tulsa riots, it is sad that we are even contemplating something like critical race theory, where children will be separated by their skin color and deemed permanently oppressors or oppressed in 2021. That is not teaching the truth, unless you believe that whites are better than blacks. I have personally heard teachers teaching CRT, and we have had an assembly shut down because Duval County Public School System consultant thought it would be a great idea to separate students by race. This is unacceptable. CRT is not racial sensitivity or simply teaching unfavorable American history or teaching Jim Crow history. CRT is deeper and more dangerous than that. CRT, and its outworking today, is a teaching that there is a hierarchy in society where white, male, heterosexual, able-bodied people are deemed the oppressor, and anyone else outside of that status is oppressed. That's why we see corporations like Coca-Cola asking their employees to be less white, which is ridiculous. I don't know about you, but telling my child or any child that they are in a permanent oppressed status in America because they are black is racist, and saying that white people are automatically above me, my children, or any child is racist as well.
Based.
Parents who are just fed up with school boards teaching such ridiculous doctrine to their children. And when I say doctrine, I use the term very specifically because that's exactly what it is. It's indoctrination. Not indoctrination making them better people or greater members of society, but indoctrination that is literally teaching hate. Or probably the most destructive of all is not necessarily the hate, but the soft bigotry of low expectations and the absolutely, at least from my perspective, indefensible ideology that individuals do not have the ability to achieve something based on the color of their skin, or that they must be treated differently, that they need a helping hand based on some ridiculous patronizing ideology. And this is where Ron DeSantis comes in. Breaking: Florida officially bans critical race theory from its classrooms. On Thursday, the Florida State Board of Education officially made it illegal to incorporate critical race theory, CRT, in public school classrooms across the entire state. The new measures include CRT and any other curriculum that could possibly distort historical events, aka the 1619 Project, which does nothing but rewrite history and make America seem like some sort of irredeemable hellscape, an irredeemable wasteland of oppression, tyranny, and violence, which is, I'd say, probably the exact opposite of what truly makes American history great in the first place. To harp on the negative and to continue on the negative, to focus on all of the wrong done in the past instead of the great events in history that allowed human rights to flourish and, of course, as a byproduct, allowed the country to flourish. The measure has full support of Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, who has previously talked about about how a measure like this is necessary to protect children from teachers or school boards who are trying to indoctrinate them with ideology. Some of this stuff, he said, I think is really toxic. I think it's going to cause a lot of division. I think it'll cause people to think of themselves more as a member of a particular race based on skin color, rather than based on the content of their character and based on their hard work and what they're trying to accomplish in life. Simple words, but hard-hitting, impactful, and exactly what I'm trying to say. And some people seem to underestimate this stuff. Some people seem to not understand just how far certain school boards or certain individual teachers take this kind of rhetoric to a whole other level, where it truly becomes destructive rather than progressive, anti-racist, as many far lefties would claim. Let me show you guys an example. Research article in Medical Journal describes whiteness as malignant, parasitic-like condition. And this comes right after the whole Yale speaker who caused the total scandal for the university. Yale speaker says comment about killing white people was meant to spark deeper talk about race. Her speech, of course, was called the psychopathic problem of the white mind. And so this is where CRT goes from potentially well-intentioned to, some would say, evil, others would say ideological indoctrination, meant to spur some sort of revolution, and some would say naive. Most likely it's a mix of all three. But one thing that we know for sure is that the intent is indoctrination, and they even admit it themselves. Oregon middle school teacher slams American dream and discusses plan to turn students into radical activists. This is what teachers have been doing with their school curriculum. They haven't been teaching your kids how to become productive members of society. They've been focused on turning your children into radical activists who are going to overthrow the US government with their ideas and usher in some revolution over a short period of time that's definitely not going to lead to communism and definitely not going to lead to further race division. I mean, the proof is in the pudding. We've seen what they've done over the last couple of years. It's absolutely ridiculous. Think about this. Teachers are trying to turn your kids into activists. They're trying to create this dynamic where they look at themselves based on the color of their skin. They're teaching the doctrine of white guilt and the soft bigotry of low expectations from those in minority groups, rather than teaching your kids about what financial security means, what financial independence means, financial literacy, understanding how to save for your future, understanding multiple sources of income, understanding what an index fund is, and getting a 6 to 8% annual return on your money, working hard and building wealth over a lifetime so you can create financial stability and a structure to raise your family and to create a better generation. That is the most important thing. That is the core to a strong society. Strong families, financial independence, financial freedom, and the ability to take care of your family and send your kids to school and offer them a better life than you have so that they can then do the exact same thing for their kids. But instead they're teaching some sort of whacked out Scientology, some sort of critical race cultish nonsense that does absolutely nothing for no one except make the problem worse, like we've seen and like I've proved 1,000 different times. And so is it any wonder that Ron DeSantis is so popular? Is it any wonder that Florida has a net positive in terms of migration, people coming into the state instead of fleeing, while California and New York are experiencing the exact opposite phenomenon? Of course, it's no wonder. They have an absolute rock star leading them with decisive leadership one after another. Speaking of rock star, here's Ron DeSantis at a local rock festival showing you exactly what I mean. And I mean, what side do you want to be on? The side that's disturbed by American patriotism and disturbed by love and a fondness for the American flag? The side that teaches you to hate America? With Mara Gay just on MSNBC the other day saying that she was disturbed by seeing trucks with the American flag on them, and then The View's Sunny Hostin defending the comments from NYT's Mara Gay calls sight of American flags threatening. What kind of twisted ideology is that? How does that help anyone? Is that really the side that you want to be on? Or do you want to be on the side that views the American flag as all-encompassing of all Americans? Patriotism, togetherness, moving forward as individuals rather than viewing people in terms of different segments of society, different cliques or different groups of races. Do you want to be on the side that focuses on low taxes, economic freedom, personal responsibility, financial literacy, a strong middle class? Or do you want to be on the side that spends all day long discussing pseudo-intellectual jargon and nonsense and focusing on really important things like social justice warriors, say birds are racist and demand species names be changed. People have lost the plot so bad that their focus is on such ridiculous, irrelevant nonsense as bird names instead of doing anything actually productive for society. I don't know about you guys, but the answer is absolutely clear for me. It's been a while since I said that one, for those of you guys who have been longtime viewers, but I'm sure you guys get what I mean. Oh, and one more victory. GOP blocks Biden nominee for past support of critical race theory and radical abortion policies. There you have it, folks. The battle against the hateful ideology of CRT is definitely a righteous one, and Ron DeSantis is as righteous as they come.
Based.
That's what I got for you. If you enjoyed the video, please make sure to leave a like, a comment, subscribe, share the video as much as possible. We're still shadow banned by the YouTube algorithm, hidden from non-subscribed viewers. I gotta get back to work though, and like usual, I want to thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you on the next one. Hey guys, welcome to the Liberal Hive Mind, a channel solely focused on exposing the abundant hypocrisy of the left. You won't believe this, folks. You definitely won't believe this because you've never seen anything like this in your entire life. It turns out the media lied to you and they pushed a completely phony narrative involving Donald Trump. And a couple months later, or in this case, a little bit over a year later, it turns out it was totally false. Of course, it didn't matter back then that it was probably provably false if anyone actually looked into it. All that mattered was that Joe Biden used it to get elected. The Democrats and the Democrat media and the Twitter sphere, the Twitter mob, used it to attack Donald Trump for months to make him seem like a despot dictator. And in the end, it turns out that the media now admits after an investigation they were wrong, but it doesn't matter. Of course, it doesn't matter to them at all because they got the exact outcome that they wanted. They took down evil Orange Man by any means necessary and lied to you once again. How many of these debunked stories are we going to cover in just a couple months? From the World War Memorial ceremony that happened in France, to Russian bounties on American heads, to Dr. Fauci, to probably a bunch other that I'm forgetting off the top of my head. And now to this one. Turns out the whole idea that Donald Trump, evil Orange Man, gassed Americans in order to clear the way in front of Lafayette Park so he can set up his photo op with the Bible during the Washington DC riots last year, turns out that's not exactly how it played out. And so let me give you an update on that story, as well as, of course, the absolutely horrendous media double standard that continues to control the media sphere. But before we get into any of it, please make sure to leave a like, a comment, subscribe, share the video as much as possible. We're still shadow banned by the YouTube algorithm, hidden from non-subscribed viewers. And with that out of the way, let's roll the tape. Alright folks, so here we go. Talk about an L from the Democrats' side in terms of their rhetoric once again. Just the other day, Democrats were all putting out tweets like this. 1 year ago today, the president gassed his own people for a photo op. Oh, the evil Orange Glorfan is so evil. Well, turns out, now we have this breaking story from disclosed.tv just in. Police did not clear Lafayette Park in DC of protesters so Trump could hold a photo op. A report by the Interior Department's Inspector General concludes. And so there you go. Another narrative completely debunked. Let's get in the Wayback Machine. Let's go on a time machine and go over just how disingenuous the media was. How they take these narratives, run with them, create a boogeyman, create a totally false narrative, propaganda, and affect the way Americans vote, affect the way Americans think, and see the opposing political side. From CNN about a year ago, peaceful protesters near White House tear gassed, shot with rubber bullets so Trump could have his church photo op. The New York Times, this was the scene outside of the White House on Monday as police used tear gas and flash grenades to clear out peaceful protesters so President Trump could visit the nearby St. John's Church where there was a parish house basement fire Sunday night. This one from NPR. Peaceful protesters tear gas to clear way for Trump church photo op. CNN on the day of reported like this.
You know, Don, to the point that the governor was making, the president wanted this photo op and he wanted to disperse that crowd because he is, he wants an image of this all of these protests being one thing, which is violent.
And so they literally ran around all parroting the same talking points to millions upon millions of Americans, lied in their faces, creating this scenario that Donald Trump was this evil orange dictator who was attacking, quote, peaceful protesters using military tactics to disperse them so then he could make his way through and take his photo op. I mean, just think about the optics that they're trying to set up there. And now it comes out, based on an official investigation from the federal government, that narrative is completely, utterly, unequivocally false, like every other thing that they report. And then these are the exact same people like Jake Tapper and the rest of them who lecture you on misinformation and disinformation and lies and constantly go on about the big lie as they continue to lie about American voters, 50% of the country, in situations like what they call the insurrection of the Capitol. It's truly evil. I mean, there's literally no other way to describe it. And the fact that there are so many people who just buy into these narratives and do the bidding of the corporate elitist class that disseminates this false information over and over again, people buy into it, promote it, and do the work of corporate billionaires who are seeking to control the collective American psyche is absolutely mind-baffling. How can you be lied to over and over and over and over again and not wake up to what the truth is when it comes to these talking heads and these so-called woke outlets that push these absolutely false narratives? You either view it as some sort of necessary evil to achieve whatever communist revolution you think is around the corner that somehow these corporate elitists are trying to accomplish with you. You know, corporate billionaires and their capitalist cronies are definitely trying to usher in communism. Seems to check out. Or you're just blind and you're just blindly following. I think it's a little bit of a mix of both, but it's truly sad. It's honestly demoralizing to a certain extent. I mean, wake up, people. Glenn Greenwald sums up the whole thing right over here. The IG who issued the report is a DC official from the Obama years. He obtained proof showing that the decision to clear the park was made well before Trump decided to go to the church. Liberals still refuse to believe it because they adore corporate media and want to be lied to. This report presents a thorough, independent examination of the evidence to assess the USPP's decision-making and operations, including a detailed timeline of the relevant actions and an analysis of whether the USPP's actions complied with governing policies. The evidence we reviewed showed that the USPP cleared the park to allow a contractor to safely install anti-scale fencing in response to the destruction of federal property and injury to officers that occurred on May 30th and 31. Moreover, the evidence established that relevant USPP officials had made those decisions and had begun implementing the operational plan several hours before they knew of a decision of potential presidential visit to the park, which occurred later that day. As such, we determined that the evidence did not support a finding that the USPP cleared the park on June 1st, 2020 so that President Trump could enter the park. There you have it, folks. An Obama official has completely exonerated, completely vindicated Donald Trump once again. How many times are these corrupt, clearly timed, mass-scale deception campaigns and witch hunts against the president gonna fall flat on their face, and people are still gonna sit here and pretend as if Donald Trump's the bad guy, Republicans are the bad guy? And the true deception and the true bias, the game that the media plays with the Democrat establishment together, has been exposing itself so vividly lately. I showed you guys the video just yesterday of Yamiche Alcindor asking that absolutely awful, terrible leading question about Donald Trump being an anomaly and the trauma in Europe. Well, now we have this one. New York Times, Katie Rogers and Jen Psaki tag team to mock Republicans and conservatives who are going crazy and getting worked up over Vice President Harris's interview with NBC's Lester Holt.
Then I just had another on the Vice President visiting the border or not visiting the border. Republicans and conservatives are, going crazy on Twitter, sending pictures,
worked up.
sending video of her interview with Lester Holt, saying, I've not been to Europe either. Does the president think there is a scenario in which she should visit the border, and also the mounting criticism from conservatives? Would that ever factor into the decision to send her down there? I mean, don't they have a point that if she has this task in front of her, should she not see the end cause as well as the root cause of migration?
Definitely no bias in that line of questioning whatsoever. Reporter asked Kamala about Biden border crisis, says, "I voted for you." For me, it's an honor because I actually got to vote for the first time as a nationalized citizen, and I voted for you. Sounds like journalism to me. They all push the narrative, they all defend the Democrats, and then they pretend as if it's a fair game. It's not. And even above and beyond that, probably the worst element of it is the actual Twitter mob that pushes the exact same kind of deceptive, ridiculous propaganda, once again doing the bidding of their Democrat overlords. Joe Biden's been doing victory laps lately. Today's job report shows historic progress for American families and the American economy. We added 559,000 jobs in May, created a record 2 million jobs in the first 4 months, and unemployment is at its lowest level since the pandemic started. America is on the move again. His fans, of course, fawning with Joe Biden's incredible job. At POTUS and his admin added 569,000 jobs in May, for a total of over 2 million jobs in his first 4 months as president, which is a record. Joe Biden said during the campaign, if you get control of the pandemic, which he has, then the economy would thrive. He was right, bravo. More than 2 million jobs created during the first 4 months of Joe Biden's leadership, more than any other administration in history. The hashtag America Rescue Plan is working, no thanks to a single Republican. Ever heard of the term useful idiot? But it's all just deception, it's all just lies, as if Joe Biden created 2 million jobs. Economies are reopening. 22 million jobs were lost at the peak or at the height of the pandemic and lockdowns. Joe Biden didn't create a single job. Joe Biden has destroyed jobs. That's just the economy reopening. Yet they all push this despicable BS job growth by president, showing Donald Trump negative 4 million. And of course, if you're completely uninformed and you see that, you'll think, wow, the worst president of all time. No one even stops to think that all of a sudden during the last year of Donald Trump's administration, the worst pandemic in world history hit and the economy is just shut down. 22 million jobs were lost. No one takes any time to actually research the micro, showing this dip right over here, US monthly job growth since the start of 2020. 22 million jobs were lost. Donald Trump created a recovery which added nearly 5 million jobs in 1 month alone. The pandemic hit again. Of course, it stagnated. Donald Trump's vaccine program then saved Joe Biden's behind. And even considering that, Joe Biden has missed the mark on nearly every single jobs report since every month that he's been in office by staggering amounts. Plus 266,000 jobs and an increase in unemployment when economists and experts were expecting 1 million jobs to return. No one pays attention to the absolute boom that happened after the second wave under Donald Trump's watch, with the GDP growth going through the roof, the highest ever seen. And even that would be disingenuous to claim Donald Trump historic GDP growth in a quarter. No, it's a bounce back from a recession, and not a bubble recession, but more of a natural disaster that put the economy on hold and then people immediately get back to work. Yet Joe Biden walks around claiming he's created 2 million jobs in 4 months. He's walking around falsely claiming that his infrastructure plan is going to create 16 million new jobs that already exist. And the Democrats, by it hook, line, and sinker, they promote this deceptive propaganda of this jobs created chart in the macro without any context whatsoever to attack Republicans and convince the minds of gullible voters of some sort of twisted anti-reality, just doing the bidding of their corporate overlords, pushing propaganda themselves that probably a lot of them know is wrong, but they'll push it anyways because the ends justify the means from their perspective. It's almost as if half the people on Twitter with blue check marks are just as much of disingenuous politicians as the politicians they elect. So no, Joe Biden didn't create 2 million jobs, but who am I kidding? Trying to explain anything like that to a Democrat is like speaking into a wall anyways. It's not like anyone's actually gonna listen. But if you're sick of the propaganda, folks, and you like what we do on this channel, we expose all the BS and the hypocrisy, please make sure to leave a like, a comment, subscribe, share the video as much as possible. We're still shadow banned by the YouTube algorithm, hidden from non-subscribed viewers, of course, so YouTube can continue to promote all of these disingenuous hacks in the corporate media. The authoritative sources seem to get everything wrong, pushing deceptive propaganda to the American people. So if you want to help us, just share the video. I gotta get back to work. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one. Hey guys, welcome to the Liberal Hive Mind, a channel solely focused on exposing the abundant hypocrisy of the left. You know how I always say that Democrats just aren't in a position to solve problems? Democrats just make things worse. This whole idea of defunding the police, or probably more idiotic even beyond that, is this notion of community policing. Well, it was as predictable as ever that not only was it going to lead to an increase in crime, which is probably what most people talk about, but it's having some disastrous effects well beyond that. You might not have noticed this because, well, it's not really reported on by any of the outlets out there, but there is something maybe akin to community policing going on, except it's probably the evil alternate, the evil twin of this notion of community policing. It's more just street justice and anarchy. 2 stories in the last week and a half have come out of police officers being called to an active shooter situation or shots fired, responding to the call, going on scene, and guess what happens? The police officer gets swarmed by a mob, and in the most egregious and most recent case, the police officer gets assaulted by individuals who have been so caught up in this idea that the police officers are evil boogeymen, they're frothing at the mouth and just ready to pounce and ready to attack the moment they see anyone wearing that blue uniform. This is what the Democrats have created. They have created complete anarchy, a total disregard for law and order, for laws in general, for people who put their lives on the line every single day to make the community better. And this is what the Democrats, and more specifically simply the Twitter mob have ushered in with their push for social justice. This, from the Democrat perspective, is progression. It's absolutely crazy, and let's just get into, once again, the lunacy of the left and just how hard their policies are backfiring. But before we get into any of it, please make sure to leave a like, a comment, subscribe, share the video as much as possible. We're still shadow banned by the YouTube algorithm, hidden from non-subscribed viewers. And with that out of the way, let's roll the tape. Alright folks, so all you gotta do is go on the Democrat website, use the Control F function or the search function to look for community policing, and you'll see tons of mentions, of course. This is what the Democrats have been actively pushing for. But Democrats always push for one idea and end up getting some sort of abomination and amalgamation, in many cases the exact opposite of what their initial intention was. Of course, they never take responsibility for it. It's somehow always white people's fault or the Republicans. But let me ask you, is this what you meant, Democrats, by community policing? Is this what you meant by defunding the police and all of your absolutely hateful rhetoric towards those selfless heroes? There was a shooting in Harlem. Someone called the cops. When the cops showed up, people took to the streets and started to attack the police officers. Now, I can't show you the actual clip itself, but I'll show you a still image. You can find the clip if you want. It's on Ian Miles Chung's Twitter feed. Just search the actual caption and it'll pop up. But police officers come in responding to a shooting in a situation where someone can literally be in danger of losing their life, and the community takes over the intersection, kicks over garbage cans, and starts throwing everything that's in the garbage can at all the police officers, kicking their vehicles, just complete anarchy and chaos. Is this what you meant, Democrats? Because this is what you've created. That story alone I didn't report on. It happened a while ago, but I held it back. Now I have to report on it because we have another one that just happened. Police officer responds alone to shots fired call. Mob swarms, attacks him, and then they cackle as it was all caught on camera. The mob swarmed on the officer and hit him with their fists and kicked him with their feet as some cackled that the attack had been caught on camera. The Jacksonville police officer responded to a call of shots fired in the Brooklyn area Thursday night. The lone officer reportedly rushed to the scene because it was a potential active shooter situation. Again, someone who was so selfless, he was willing to put his body on the line alone with no backup. At least backup hadn't arrived yet. Reinforcements were most likely called. But he didn't question himself, saying maybe I should wait for backup. It was so severe to him. He wanted to make sure that he protected the community so badly, he was willing to put his body alone, charging in without hesitation. I mean, that's just heroism. And he was rushed and attacked by an angry mob who have bought into the Democrat narrative that he must be some sort of evildoer that wants to harm the community, when the exact opposite is most likely true. In a statement on the incident, Steve Zona, president of the Fraternal Order of Police in Jacksonville, said our police officer was actually responding to a report of gunshots, shots being fired, so equate that to a potential active shooter situation. When he got down there to try and get people to disperse, one of the people from the crowd actually attacked our police officer, and he added. Social media video captured the moment that the crowd surrounded the lone officer and pushed him to the ground, shouting expletives and attacking him. In the video, the unarmed officer, who had a rifle strapped to his back, is able to climb to his feet as the person recording in the now viral video runs off laughing about the incident, how he caught the heartless attack on video. The video does not show what took place immediately following the attack on the officer. Zona also expresses disappointment that no one stepped in to help the lone officer during the attack, but according to a new report from WTLV TV, a takedown and arrest of the suspected attacker followed. We have tremendous support here from the community, and I don't think what happened to our police officer is a direct reflection of our community here in Jacksonville. I say it's a direct reflection of the people there, he added. No, you know what? It's a direct reflection of Democrat narratives, of Black Lives Matter narratives run amok. That's what it is. Don't get it twisted. And just the cowardice of people to stand up for the right thing. I mean, think about what's been going on in New York over the last couple of weeks. There have been hate crimes non-stop targeted towards elderly folk just being randomly assaulted in the streets. People sit there mindlessly recording with their videos, trying to get some sort of viral video on the internet. I don't even know what they're doing. Instead of actually helping, instead of apprehending the subject and making sure that that subject ends up in police custody by the end of it. How we have fallen as a society, where we just sit around and watch and record as terrible things happen, and we don't stand up collectively for the right thing. And of course, the direct of people just not standing up for the right thing means that police officers appeal to the lowest common denominator and run on these absolutely absurd policies. As everything that's happening in New York City, in Harlem, police officers responding to active shooting. Candidate for mayor of New York City wants to defund the police, but of course, has private security in her own neighborhood. Surprise, surprise, surprise to no one. These people aren't affected. They're not affected by demonizing police officers. They only care about using it as a tactic to emotionally manipulate you so they could get elected into office, so they can seem woke to the young hip crowd. And what they've done is created an epidemic epidemic of societal chaos and a massive rift, a fracture, a division between the community and those who have dedicated their lives to serve and protect it. Black man confronts Asian officer in New York City, calls him a racist slur, and says black people can't be racist. You know what that is? That's a reflection once again of Democrat narratives. Seattle police furious after city finance department sends and then defends an all-staff email calling cops white supremacists. Minnesota judge sympathizes with a man who torched the Minneapolis police precinct and called him a good person. As long as left-wingers control cultural narratives and continue to perpetuate this myth that they are the moral superior, that they are the group of ethics and compassion, as long as that narrative continues to be prevalent, things will continue to go downhill. It's been 4 years of this far-left movement that started slowly under the Obama era, but has really whipped up into a frenzy over the last couple of years. And it's been 4 years of Democrats and left-wing activists enriching themselves of violence and mayhem and symbolism and slogans, a whole bunch of surface-level BS and political rhetoric that leads to absolutely nothing, and they always justify themselves with the exact same line. Oh, we started the conversation. It started a conversation, but people are literally dying on the streets. Businesses are burning, and all you're really doing is enabling woke capitalism, major corporations to take advantage of racial plight and social issues, and get Democrats elected, who you yourselves continue to complain on Twitter aren't actually sticking to any of the campaign promises that you elected them in the positions for in the first place. And so how long will people buy into this grift? How long will the far left dominate? I don't know, but something's got to change with the cultural grip that they seem to have over the youth, or the easily convinced, or the majorly gullible. Like usual, folks, spread this story as much as possible. The media refuses to cover it. Mobs of people attacking police officers in cities that are trying to respond to emergency calls and save people's lives. It basically does not get any worse than that, and the media pretends as if it doesn't happen. If it irks you as much as it irks me, then just spread the word. Of course, like the video and comment as well. But now, I gotta get back to work. There's a whole lot of these stories that must be exposed, that must be covered, because the media refuses to do their job. I'm gonna get back to that. I want to thank you for watching. I'll see you on the next one. Hey guys, welcome to the Liberal Hive Mind, a channel solely focused on exposing the abundant hypocrisy of the left. It seems as though the prediction that I just made yesterday is coming true, at least to a certain extent. I stated specifically that Kamala Harris was a good idea in terms of the short term. She helped Joe Biden get across that finish line, absolutely. Joe brought in the moderates, Kamala brought in the far lefties. But it seems as though Kamala Harris isn't necessarily panning out in the long term, as the White House just pretty much threw her under a bus. The White House itself is now turning on Kamala Harris. It's been 3 days that she's been thrusted in the spotlight. It's been basically over 100 days that she's been non-existent. All of a sudden, she's at the core of the news cycle, and it's just been disaster after disaster. A total PR blunder for the Democrat Party, and more specifically the Biden administration. And when it's extremely obvious, well, even a Democrat can see it. And so now there's apparently leaked concerns coming out of the White House, confused, perplexed, these are the actual quoted words, over Kamala's inability to answer simple questions, folks. And this isn't some phony, anonymous right-wing source running to Fox News and trying to create this story, create this drama. This is CNN reporting. Let me show you guys what I mean, and let's get into the abundant hypocrisy surrounding Kamala Harris and the absolute train wreck that is the southern border. But before we get into any of it, please make sure to leave a like, a comment, subscribe, share the video as much as possible. We're still shadow banned by the YouTube algorithm, hidden from non-subscribed viewers. With that out of the way, let's roll the tape. Alright folks, well if you thought that I was kidding or I was exaggerating, look at the reporting that we're seeing from CNN on Kamala Harris's quote performance as the White House borders are on a recent trip to South America.
Poppy, it's no surprise that the White House was not thrilled by that answer, a little bit confused as to why she handled it that way. The obvious discomfort with Lester's question, the nervous laughter there, it's hard to understand because this is a question that the administration's been dealing with for months.
CNN says that the White House is confused by Harris's trouble with questions that the admin has been dealing with for months. CNN White House is perplexed by Kamala Harris's inability to answer simple questions. And I think pretty much every single American is thinking the exact